From the Chronicle Podcast Network, this is the Skin Spectrum Podcast, your weekly conversation about ethnodermatology. This discussion is all about our skin, the doctors who treat it, and the diverse patients who live their lives under it. On today's Skin Spectrum Podcast, we talk about pain experience during dermatology procedures and management strategies for pain. Your host today is Dr. Julia Carroll, dermatologist and founder of Compass Dermatology in Toronto. Dr. Carroll's guest is Wade Hall, Vice President of Research and Development at Crescita Therapeutics. Wade joins us today from Salt Lake City, Utah. Here's their discussion.
Welcome to the Skin Spectrum Podcast. I'm Dr. Julia Carroll, and I'll be your host for this week. Today, we're fortunate to be speaking about Pliaglis with Wade Hall. Welcome, Wade.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
So can you briefly describe the pain management solution that's now available in Canada and tell us about its unique properties?
Pliaglis cream contains 7% lidocaine and 7% tetracaine, which to our knowledge are the highest approved concentrations of local anesthetics anywhere in the world. We developed the formulation to work faster and better than EMLA, and the data we have says that we have accomplished that objective. This proprietary formulation allows for the enhanced delivery of lidocaine, which has a fast onset time and works as quickly as 20 minutes, and tetracaine, which has a long duration of anesthetic effect, up to 11 hours, the combination of which provides for a very strong anesthetic effect and excellent pain relief. The formulation is also self-occluding, meaning it dries to form a film that can be peeled from the skin after drying. It doesn't require occlusion or covering with a plastic film like EMLA.
I think one of the things that we've been really pleasantly surprised with at our office is the long-lasting effects of this product. And so that's the tetracaine that's contributing to that.
Definitely. The benefit there is, after the procedure, the longer duration of effect may help in providing some post-procedural pain relief. And again, it's not so much that you can't feel anything, but any pain or discomfort would be minimized by the anesthetic effect, which is, largely due to tetracaine.
As a dermatologist, when I choose treatments for my patients, one of the promises I always make to them is that it will be well supported by evidence. So can you go through what some of the literature says about the efficacy of Pliaglis?
It took us, about 8 to 10 years to develop and get this product approved. More than 47 clinical studies performed throughout the development of Pliaglis, demonstrating the safety and efficacy of the product in a variety of different procedures, including laser hair removal, laser skin resurfacing, collagen and dermal filler injections, tattoo removal. We didn't study every potential use under the sun, but we did study a number of different indications. During the clinical development, close to 3,000 subjects were enrolled in the clinical studies, and about 2,500 subjects were exposed to Pliaglis. Pliaglis is currently approved in 26 countries around the world, including the US, Canada, Europe, Latin America, and Asia. And since the original US launch of the product by Galderma in 2007, about 10 million units of the product have been sold, corresponding to nearly 200 million grams of product and about a total of 38 million patient treatment exposures. So the product has a long history of safe use in patients. Our partner in Italy recently completed a clinical study using the product prior to photodynamic therapy. And the efficacy results were very positive and were just published in a leading journal. So overall, Pliaglis has an excellent safety history and a very positive benefit-risk outcome as a local anesthetic for cutaneous use for a wide variety of different dermal procedures.
You're listening to Skin Spectrum Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Julia Carroll. How does this new option differ from some of the other topical pain management measures we've been using in medical anesthetic dermatology? For example, I think many of our listeners will have experience with EMLA and compounded BLT cream. So what's the difference and how do they make that choice?
So EMLA has become kind of the standard of care because it's been around so long. But many creams such as EMLA require occlusive dressings in order to enhance their penetration into the skin. If you're performing a laser procedure on a contoured area like the face, it can often be difficult to cover the area with a plastic film for 1 to 2 hours before you perform the procedure. So Pliaglis is self-occluding, meaning you just spread the cream and let it dry. You don't need to cover it with an occlusive dressing. Then once the product is dry, it can be peeled from the skin and you can perform the procedure. And the other main difference is onset time. Pliaglis is approved for application for as little as 20 to 30 minutes for many procedures. And certainly if a deeper effect or a more painful procedure is involved, you can wait, say, for up to an hour. So our product works more than twice as fast as EMLA. Compounded creams such as BLT may have higher concentrations of local anesthetics, but just having a high drug load does not mean that the active is being delivered efficiently into the skin or effectively. Our formulation is designed to enhance the dermal delivery of both local anesthetics, which combine to form a eutectic mixture which optimizes the delivery to the local tissue. Safety, quality, and stability are also question marks for some compounded products, as safety, pharmacokinetic, and efficacy studies typically have not been performed for these sorts of products. So I know personally I would prefer to use a product that has been demonstrated through clinical studies and regulatory review to be safe and effective. It should also be noted EMLA has been associated with methemoglobinemia, which is a serious condition caused by oxidation of the iron in red blood cells, preventing hemoglobin from transporting oxygen. And the condition is a recognized complication from some local anesthetics, but particularly with prilocaine.
Okay, so I think it really comes down to both the patient experience and the physician experience. We know that the way patients feel about a particular treatment has a lot to do with how we ultimately use it in our clinic and how they perceive their experience in our clinic as well. To that note, to gather more information, there is a standardized patient satisfaction index under development to make it easier to compare anesthetic approaches. Listeners, this index is recruiting clinics to participate in the study at PSI-CAP.tk. That's PSI-CAP.tk if you'd like to learn more. And we've been doing this study in our clinic as well. Wade, what has the patient feedback been like for Pliaglis?
I have the benefit of receiving calls and direct inquiries from physicians around the world. And a lot of the feedback that I get is that the patient experience definitely is the most important indicator of success. A number of clinicians told me that they're aiming to offer a relaxing and spa-like experience with the patient, but some of these procedures are quite painful. Those who are doing the hands-on treatment with the patients, they can tell when the patients are experiencing pain because of their body is tense, they may twitch or flinch, when the procedure is occurring or when you're pulsing the laser. A number of practitioners have told me that they've tested a variety of products, from compounded products to EMLA and other topical anesthetics. They've said just firsthand that no other product works as well in their experience than Pliaglis. So for me, having spent quite a bit of time developing the formulation and getting this product approved and through all the clinical studies, it's very rewarding to hear that product works and does what we were hoping that it would do, and encouraging to hear the positive feedback.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Comfortable patients make happy patients, makes an easier procedure, and that makes a much happier doctor. You're listening to Wade Hull, Vice President of Research and Development at Crescita Therapeutics. So Wade, I want to dive in a little bit deeper. How did you come to invent Pliaglis, and how did your background in science lead you to this really interesting project?
Years ago, when we started developing Pliaglis, it seemed like physicians were just beginning to perform a lot of these cosmetic derm procedures using lasers. And a number of them were quite painful. And the feedback we were getting is that EMLA took a long time to work, was cumbersome to apply and cover up, and not many patients wanted to wait 1 to 2 hours with their faces covered with plastic film before the procedure. So we tested a number of different anesthetic agents in a variety of concentrations, and we found that lidocaine and tetracaine had great synergy, provided both fast onset, very dense anesthesia, and a long duration of effect. So we decided to use the base form of the local anesthetic since they have better permeability as opposed to the hydrochloride. However, an effective topical local anesthetic formulation typically requires high water content to provide hydration of the outer layer of the skin, the stratum corneum. And the base forms typically have lower water solubility. So one of the secret components of our formulation is that the two actives form a eutectic mixture. So the dry solids or the powdered solids actually melt and form a liquid that is suspended as fine oil droplets throughout the aqueous or the water phase. And that helps achieve the requirements of a high drug concentration, but also high water content in the formulation. So it took a number of iterations, but we optimized the formulation to maximize the delivery and the stability. We validated the manufacturing process, which is performed under GMP conditions. And it's definitely very rewarding now to have a product approved around the world that's used by patients to relieve the pain associated with a variety of different procedures.
Can you just explain again exactly what a eutectic mixture is? Because I know in our previous conversations, that's something that really is important to the formulation. And just for some of us who may not have as much of a scientific background as you, I think that's a really interesting point just to dive into a little bit more.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting chemical phenomenon. Basically, where you get a phase transition from a solid to a liquid stage when you combine the two ingredients. So lidocaine and tetracaine at room temperature are both white crystalline solids. So kind of like sugar and salt at room temperature. If you mix sugar and salt together, you would just have a mixture of two different white compounds, right? Sugar and salt. But when you mix lidocaine and tetracaine, they actually undergo a phase transition and they melt at room temperature and become a slightly yellowish liquid or an oil. And so the fact that they're transitioned already from a solid to a liquid gives them better properties to permeate the skin. And then what we've done is distribute this oil phase, or the liquid oil, that's the pure actives, in a water phase. The water actually is the vehicle to carry the drug through the skin. If you just put the pure oil on your skin, it really won't permeate the skin very well or very effectively. So a small amount of that will become soluble in the water, and then it's carried through the skin into the tissues and has the effect. So some really interesting chemical phenomenon that help make the formulation work even better in the skin.
One last question on my side. I don't know if it's our Canadian and American accents. I say Pliaglis and you say
Pliaglis. So it can be pronounced a variety of ways. When we develop the name, you actually have to present the FDA with the most specific or preferred pronunciation. But I think part of the name came when we were talking with a marketing firm, and they looked at the product. It is a shiny white glistening cream. And so they kind of took the words that it's pliable and forms this pliable film on the skin, and that it's kind of glistening, a shiny white film. They kind of played off, I think, some of those words in the origin of the name. And so that's maybe why, in my mind, it comes out more as Pliaglis. But again, the product's approved in many different countries. I've heard probably dozens of different pronunciations. So generally, I refer to it as Pliaglis. In your clinical practice, you also use local anesthetics, including Pliaglis. And what are some of the procedures where you find Pliaglis to be a good choice for pain management?
Well, we definitely use it consistently in our injectable practice. So particularly for fillers, but also for some patients who request it for neuromodulators. We love it for around the lips and around the eyes, because those are areas that more traditional compounded type anesthetic products tend to run. And in the past, we have had some issues with the product running into eyes, and that turns something that was meant to make the experience more comfortable into an uncomfortable experience. Pliaglis has been really great for that. We use it for ablative laser procedures, for skin tag removal, cryotherapy, if we're doing areas like on the neck or on the face, and then even just for some of our medical procedures, if we're doing a biopsy, particularly on a child, if we want to anesthetize the area before we inject local anesthetic, then we use this. It's kind of fun with the peeling off process. With the kids, we get them involved. And so that's been a great addition to that side of our practice as well.
So what sort of feedback have you had from some of your patients regarding their experience with the product?
Well, it's interesting because when I was, doing some preparation for this interview, we have an email system where we contact our patients, and we had used it on one of the patients. And she actually texted into our office and she said, "Hey there, Dr. C was asking about the new freezing cream and how it lasts. I still feel frozen 4 hours later. It's amazing." So I think that's, right from the patient's mouth. I've actually been using this product for quite a long time, and then it went away. It came back. We were really excited to get it back into our practice. And so we just picked up where we left off with it.
And every product maybe has, the technique associated with using it. But have you encountered any specific challenges in working with the product in your clinic, and anything you've learned based on your experience?
Yeah, definitely there's some differences between it and some of the products that the traditional, mixtures that we were using in the past. I think one of the tips I picked up from you was that this product doesn't have to be kept in the fridge, because when it arrives, there's like labels on it that tell you to put it in the fridge, and it should be stored in the fridge long term, but it can be out of the fridge for, I believe, up to 3 months. Am I correct? Yeah. And so when we first had it, we were always kind of trying to warm it up, and it was a bit difficult to spread it. But since that, now we just have a tube in every room, and that's made a huge difference for our ability to use it. So I think that's a good thing for our listeners to know. I think one of the challenges in our office, maybe it's like because my staff have a real fun element to them, but they always fight over who's going to take it off, because they like the fact that it's like Elmer's glue and they get to peel it. I don't know if that's a millennial thing or what. In seriousness, I think one of the things that's interesting is because it does peel off, you get a little bit of pilling. And And so sometimes it'll get in people's hair or on their clothing, which is different than, when you wipe a product off. So we tend to use, particularly if we're doing something on lower face or big area, we'll put a dental bib on a patient just so we capture any of those, that little bit of product that comes off. And that's been really great. The odd patient gets a little bit of redness in the area, a tiny bit of swelling, but we also see that again with traditional mixtures of anesthetic creams or EMLA. So that hasn't been any different, but just when you peel it off and you see that red area, a little bit surprising, but I don't think that it's a higher rate than people's reactions to other creams. I haven't had any long-term problems. It goes away. They're numb in that area. And by the time the numbing goes away, the redness has gone. So overall, no challenges, just learning the ins and outs of the product.
Yeah, maybe just to elaborate, tetracaine maybe isn't as commonly used in topical products, and that's largely due to the chemical stability. So that's why the product is, in order to have a 2-year shelf life, is stored under refrigeration. But as you indicated, it's not so sensitive that it can't be left at room temperature for up to 3 months. So clinical practice, it probably makes more sense that it can be, left out at room temperature, and then it's maybe a little easier to apply when it's at room temperature as opposed to refrigerated.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that feedback. So I also understand your clinic is enrolled in the PSI-CAP project. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about your experience there and the findings to date?
Yeah, so we've just been running the project for over 2 weeks, both myself and my partner, Dr. Sonia Cook. So we've each enrolled about 10 patients, I think, in the past couple of weeks. The patient that texted in was one of those patients. Patients at our office really love to be part of things that are experimental or new or part of a research project. So we always get great feedback and they're very honest with their opinions. I've been using it mostly with my injectable patients, although we have done a few, like with benign lesion removals. So far it's all been positive feedback. My only fear is that now we're spoiling them. And so the people that are just getting a little bit of Botox or neuromodulator are going to want us to numb them all the time. And so sometimes it'll turn a 15-minute appointment into a 30, but that's okay. We're all about the patient experience. So I think we've converted a lot of people over to topical numbing agent, particularly Pliaglis, preceding their appointments. So yeah, all positive feedback so far.
Well, it's great to hear of your experience there. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to share some of the background and our experience in developing the product.
Yeah, that's been great. I always like talking to the people who are, at the beginning of the story and can give you all the interesting little tidbits. I've always learned so much from you. So I appreciate the creation of the product and your willingness to share the history and the science behind it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks so much.
You've been listening to Wade Hall on the Skin Spectrum podcast. Thank you for listening.
That was Dr. Julia Carroll speaking with Wade Hall. Listeners, if you have a question or comment about this episode or ideas about future podcasts in the series, please share your thoughts. Get in touch by sending a message to podcast@skinspectrum.online. Attach a voice clip to your email, and we might use your question on a future podcast. The Skin Spectrum podcast is produced from studios in Buffalo, New York and Toronto, Canada by Chronicle Companies, publishers of the Chronicle of Skin and Allergy and organizers of the Skin Spectrum Summit. Visit us at www.skinspectrum.ca or www.derm.city, where dermatology lives. Subscribe to the Skin Spectrum podcast at Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. In 2 weeks, we'll start our summer series of weekly reports with a special focus on the black and brown dermatology patient. This episode was produced by Jeremy Visser, with assistance by Arya Impakaris. Research was done by John Evans and Alan Ryan. Until next time, thanks for listening. We'll talk again on June 26th.